The quiet village of Umunze, where the dust rose golden in the evenings and the market sang with batter and laughter, Adora learned young how to swallow sorrow without breaking the world around her. Her father died one dry afternoon. The whole village gathered, women crying at the gate, children pressed to their mother's skirts, men whispering beside the smoke coiled kitchen fires. Adora stood small among them, a thin cloth clutched in her shaking hands, feeling the world tilt. When the coffin was lowered and the yam-filled bowls returned to the courtyard, the house felt larger and emptier at once. After the mourning, she was left in the care of a woman who had married her father for reasons that never had room for tenderness. The stepmother's voice was a ledger of rules, sharp, precise, and cold. Her two daughters, Amaka and Nena, wore bright wrappers and brighter smiles whenever Adora was nearby. They moved through the house as if shadows offended them. Adora was quietly pushed into corners, given the chores that took the day and left her night raw. She slept on a worn raffle mat in the corridor. Dawn found her rising before the rooster, hands already raw from yesterday's work, sweeping the courtyard until dust rose and settled in grey waves, washing plates until the water grew dark, fetching firewood that scrapped her shoulders raw, carrying heavy yams and pounding them into fufu, while the stepsister lounged in sunlight, fingers adorned with small showy beads. The stepmother's approval came in sharp commands and rarely in comfort. Adora learned to be useful and unseen. Her voice softened until it knew how to speak only when spoken to. Her heart grew careful, but never bitter. One evening, long after the last cooking fire had died and the house lay under a pale ribbon of moonlight, she washed the last bowl alone. The basin trembled with her ragged breath. She finished rinsing, but instead of standing, she sank to her knees. Tears slid into the water and spread in tiny silent rings. Why am I born into suffering? She whispered into the darkness. No answer came, only the distant cry of an owl and the soft creak of the house. The next day, with a small basket of tomatoes balanced on her head, Adora walked the path to the market. The road was lined with children playing and women carrying water pots on their hips. On the roadside, leaning against the shade of a palm, an old woman struggled with a heavy pot. People passed, some looked away, and some pretended not to notice. Adora moved closer. Mama, let me help you, she said. Though her own stomach felt hollow, she put her arm under the pot, felt the rough rope against her palm, and together they bore it to the woman's hut. The old woman's face was a map of years and small graces. She set the pot down, and her palm rested over Adora's hand as if to anchor something fragile. My child, she said softly, the world may ignore you, but kindness never goes unnoticed. From the folds of her wrapper, she drew out a small cowrie charm, a shell tucked in a loop of red thread. It was simple, only a cowrie and thread, but her fingers trembled as she gave it to Adora. Take this, the old woman whispered. Let your good heart attract good things. Adora accepted it. She felt warmer than she had in months. She pressed the charm to her chest, and the old woman smiled like a benediction. Then the woman closed her hut door and disappeared into the home of the village. Adora never saw her again. That very morning, the tomatoes she had placed on her small mat at the market became rounder, redder, plump with a shine like bright coins. The little fish she had brought from the stream seemed larger, eyes bright and scales glittering. Bitter fruits she had hesitated to sell tasted suddenly sweet. When a curious child took one and bit into it, whispers spread like embers. Look at Adora's tomatoes. Where did she get such fish? People's eyes met hers for the first time with curiosity instead of indifference. For the first time in a long while, Adora felt seen. Word traveled quick in Umunze. Traders from the next village came to buy from her. Farmers left sacks of cassava for her to touch and leaped into new life. She did not hoard the changes. She gave small fruit to children, offered extra yams to an old widow down the lane. The charms effect where they existed seemed to honor the gentleness of her hand. But eyes that once looked away now watched closely. Amaka and Nena saw the market flock smiles, the traders' coins, the way people's voice brightened when Adora's store came into view. They watched her wrist, a tiny loop of red thread resting at the bend of her arm, and greed called in their chest. Late one night, when the rafters held the house in a cool silence, they stole down the corridor. Adora slept, small and tired, on her raffle market. The girls crept to her, fingers trembling with excitement and envy. Nena whispered, "That's what's giving her luck." Amaka's hand was daft. She untied the red threaded cowrie. Early the next morning, they ran to the shop they kept near the market, a wooden store with a faded sign and a roof patched with palm leaves. Inside, they touched yams, fish, basket of plantain. To their first delight, everything they handed seemed to hold perfectly. Yams were firm, sweet, fish were fat, plantain glowed with ripeness. Customers drifted in, their faces lit with surprise and admiration. Adora passed that day carrying a basket of tomatoes. She saw the stepsisters at the store, cheeks flushed with success, goods displayed like trophies. Her chest tightened. She went closer, but the stepmother's voice, sharp as a snapped stick, held her back. "Leave it, Adora. They are no longer yours," the stepmother said. Tears burned behind Adora's eyes as she walked away. She wanted to call out, to ask them to return what had belonged to her, but her voice had learned obedience and quiet. She clung to the little basket and kept walking. The next day, their success swelled. Amaka and Nena paraded through the market like new queens, their wrappers bright, their heads held high. Villagers flocked to their store. "See these fish, see these yams." They crowded, and coins clicked. The market hummed with everything praised. Adora stood across the road, clutching a small basket, watching as the crowd circled the sister's store. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and a child's voice calling for a big yam sounded like a puncture in her heart. Her stepmother looked on with a smirk, never moved to call the girls back. The world seemed to applaud the theft, while the thief's silence was required. On the third day, pride and small miracles made their reckoning. The store was crowded, the sun was high and warm. Nena reached to adjust a basket of vegetables, and without warning, the charm slipped from her wrist. It hit the wooden floor with a small bright sound. They longed for it. Their fingers reached, but their hands no longer moved as they should. Their fingers trembled and failed to close around the cowrie. A coldness spread up their arms. Their laughter evaporated into a shriek. In a breathless instant, the goods around them lost color and life. Yams shivered into dull lumps, fish clouded and sank with a sour odor, fruit blackened at the tips. The market quieted, a swarm of onlookers pressing in as if the air itself had changed. They tried to pull the charm free, to hold it again, but their wrist felt wrong, heavy, clumsy. Their skin took on a strange gray tint, fingers wet, numb, and pale. Panic laced their faces with lines deeper than anger had ever made. Villagers recoiled, and then, as if led by a small patient fate, the charm rolled across the wounded floor and came to rest near the edge of the store. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Some reached, the stepsisters reached, but their hands could not gather that small shell. They stared, breathless, watching the cowrie as if belonged to another world. Adora was there, drawn by the silence and the sudden hush. She moved not with fury or triumph, but with a quietness that had been taught to her by years of careful living. She knelt, scooped up the cowrie charm with hands that were steady and gentle, and held it against her palm. It did not hum, it did not hum loudly, but a tender warmth rose through the red thread to her skin, like dawn fanning a cool field. Without hesitation, she tied the charm back around her wrist. Then, to show there was no hoarding in her touch, she reached for a small basket of tomatoes on a nearby table and laid her fingertips against the fruit. In an instant, the tomato seemed to gather sunlight, deeper red, round, heavy with juice. Someone gasped, children stared. The grayness in the stepsister's hand stayed long after, a mark of consequence. But the air around Adora filled with the same small miracle that had first met her. At her small shop, which she had opened with money saved from those early market days, things changed even more. Adora painted a bright sign, swept the threshold each morning as sun spilled over the village roofs, and arranged baskets with care and gratitude. She kept prices fair, shared with neighbors, and smiled at those who had never smiled at her before. Farmers brought withered crops, she touched stalks and they strengthened with renewed vigor. Traders asked if she could bless their wares before a big sale, and she, with her gentle hands and quiet voice, obliged when she could. The market that had once ignored her now thronged towards her stall. People from neighboring villages came to see the girl, whose hand made things thrive. Mothers brought children who had been ill, and Adora, taking the child's feverish brow in her own palm, watched colour come back to cheeks. An old man whose cassava refused to grow for a season brought a sack of shivered roots. She took one in her hand and watched it regain its strength. She never kept a miracle for herself. If a widow needed yams, Adora gave what she could, sometimes refusing payment with a shy shake of her head. The stepsisters watched from across the market as a villagers' admiration circled Adora like birds, returning to a favorite tree. Their shop, once proud and loud, grew quiet. Their fingers remained paler than the rest of the village for many seasons, a lingering testimony to the cost of greed. They began to understand slowly, painfully, that you could not take what was given for kindness and expect it to become a throne. Time moved with gentle patience. Adora's life did not grow into dazzling glory overnight. It unfolded in small miracles. She became known not only as a girl whose touch brought bounty, but as a woman who offered bread to the hungry. She watched a neighbor's small child without complaints. She spoke softly to those who had lost hope. People respected her. They brought harvest to her door. Traders asked her blessing before selling through the market. Her little shop became a place of laughter and care, inside bright as the inside of a shell. One evening, as smoke poured from 1,000 heat and the market shut with murmurs of deals made and vegetables bagged, Amaka and Nina came to Adora's shop. Their steps were tentative. No loud boasting accompanied them. Only regret sat in their faces like a visible thing. The stepmother stood behind them, her chest less hard than it had been when she had ordered Adora about. Adora, Amaka said at last, voice small. We are sorry. We were wrong to take from you. We were wrong to be cruel. And Nena's eyes were rimmed in the shadow of sleepless nights. We are ashamed, she added. Please forgive us. Adora looked at them for a long moment. She saw the ashen color still lingering in their fingers and the weight of remorse on their shoulders. Her heart, gentle as it had always been, softened in a way that had nothing to do with the charm around her wrist. You must be better, she said quietly. Let your hands do kindness. She spoke not with a ledger of old grievances, but with the small bright mercy she had practiced all her life. Her stepmother came forward, voice crooked with something like sorrow. Adora, she said, I have been cruel, forgive me. Adora nodded. There was no loud proclamation, no great festival that unrolled overnight, but the change was true. As the sisters and stepmother touched Adora's outstretched hands in apology, hello, in their fingers eased over days into the color of the rest of the village. It was as if the act of contrition, followed by steady kindness and labor, smoothing the bruise left by greed. From that day on, the house where Adora had once slept on a raffle mat grew quieter in its cruelty. The stepsisters learned to work with her, to carry water without snares, to laugh at jokes that did not cut. The people celebrated Adora in small warm ways. They invited her to sit at important meetings in the market cycle. They spared the first and best of the harvest for her to share. Children sought her to see what ordinary magic might happen when she smiled. Travelers told the story of the girl with a carrot on her wrist who treated everyone, rich, poor, old, young, with the same hands. Adora never made herself a queen. She kept her shop tidy, worked with the son to arrange the basket, and mended small things in her spare moments. Her life was not an endless parade of miracles. Some mornings the rain spoiled the goods, some days the child's fever refused to break, but her hand kept trying, and where it could, the charm and her care brought good fruit and ease. As time passed, the memory of the theft turned into a tale shared over evening fires, a caution and a parable that envy could take a person's peace, and that true blessing belonged to those who gave and not clutched. The stepsister's apology and slow repair of their relationship with Adora showed the village that human hearts could change. And Adora, she continued to watch, to sweep, to mend, to plant. She continued to trust fish that gleamed and vegetables that strengthened and children who smiled anew. She continued to be quiet, to be a quiet center around which other lives turned with hope. Whenever someone asked what made her good so fine, she would only smile and say, "I do not know. I only do what my heart tells me." The charm remained on her wrist, a simple carry tied in red thread. It did what it had always done. It gathered attention, but it was Adora's hand, steady, kind, and patient, that turned attention into blessing. In the market of Umunze, where dust meets laughter and morning light struck the wounded stalls, just right. Adora's story was not finished. It did not end with a single crown or a single goodbye. It was a living thing. The steady work of helping, the slow repair of old hurts, and the daily practice of giving. People celebrated her, sometimes with songs at harvest, sometimes with a quiet bowl of stew left at the door. Amaka and Nena, their hands healed, worked with her at times, learning and earning. What you have by honest labor and humble kindness was his own reward. The stepmother learned slowly that a heart softened was more useful than others backed. And so the days continued, a village full of small miracles and quieter sorrows, but with a girl at its center who kept doing what she always did. She helped, she planted, she blessed what she could, and the people around her found reasons again and again to call her by the name and to be kinder because of her.